After 15 years of loyalty, Miles Garcia was handed an insult severance pay of just 1 cent. But when the arrogant CO Adrian thought he had the upper hand, Miles had a plan. The next morning, Miles' phone wouldn't stop ringing. Adrian, once so smug, was now desperately calling, trying to undo the disaster that had just begun. But why is Adrian so frantic? What did Miles do to make him so desperate? Discover how one man's clever revenge led to a cascade of chaos for a corrupt CEO. The moment I saw the severance pay handed to me by the company I had worked at for 15 years, I froze. The amount listed in the severance pay column was an astonishing 1 cent. What kind of mistake could lead to such a figure? This joke has gone too far. However, the CEO, as if it were only natural, said this: "It's a token of appreciation." The CEO genuinely seemed convinced that my severance pay was just 1 cent. Having worked as a full-time employee for 15 years and not even receiving proper severance pay, it was so ridiculous that I didn't even have the energy to argue. "I'll tidy up everything and leave." Ignoring the grinning CEO, I start cleaning up my desk. I always felt I didn't get along with the CEO, but I never imagined he would even mess with my severance pay. If that was how he wanted to play it, I had an idea too. "Sir, may I clean up the contents of the computer as well?" The CEO gave me permission with a "do as you please." His smug attitude was infuriating. I booted up the computer and literally cleaned up everything. Anyone who had worked here would have stopped me from doing this. The next day, I received a call from the CEO. That was the signal for my revenge to begin. "My name is Miles Garcia, and I'm 33 years old. I work as the general affairs manager at a certain company. I grew up poor, so I started working as soon as I graduated from high school. However, back then, it was extremely difficult for someone without a proper education to find a job. Moreover, I was physically weak and didn't want to do manual labor. With that in mind, I started looking for office jobs. As long as the job didn't require experience and accepted high school graduates, I didn't care about the salary or if the location was a bit far, so I applied everywhere until I got an offer from one company. It was a small town factory, but Mr. Brown, the CEO, was a great person and welcomed me warmly even though I was just a high school graduate. Now, I think it was a miraculous encounter. Being a high school graduate, I couldn't expect to thrive on the front lines. I thought it wouldn't be strange to end up working in much worse conditions, but Mr. Brown seemed to have high hopes for young people. Young people will become valuable assets. If you think of it as an investment in the future, it's a small price to pay. I felt you would work here for a long time and contribute to the company. I'm counting on you." Moved by those words, I worked hard to learn the job. I was determined to repay his kindness. However, just as I began to really get the hang of the job, rumors started about Mr. Brown's retirement. Feeling it would be ungrateful not to have repaid his kindness, I expressed my feelings to him. Mr. Brown smiled and praised my efforts. "You're one of the few who took my words to heart back then. But I can't fight old age any longer. I don't think I can be of much help if I continue. You will continue to excel. Please look after the next CEO." Without retracting his retirement decision, Mr. Brown stepped down. I thought the next CEO would be his son, but it turned out to be someone else. The new CEO was Adrian Thompson. I was shocked by this unexpected appointment. Adrian had been the sales manager and had joined the company a few years earlier from another firm. Thanks to the sales channels he brought from his previous job, our sales nearly doubled compared to the previous year, but he also had a dark reputation, and many in the company didn't like him. His methods were unusually ruthless, imposing extreme targets on his subordinates, scolding them if they couldn't meet them, and setting even higher targets if they did. If someone wasn't his preferred type of subordinate, he was even harsher, leading to a constant shortage of staff in the sales department. Due to the severe environment, I, as the general affairs manager, had once advised Adrian. I was friends with one of Adrian's subordinates, but that person was despised by Adrian and received such terrible treatment that they developed a mental illness and had to quit. Stop crushing people with your methods immediately. Do you really think this is acceptable? Someone who doesn't know sales shouldn't interfere. I'm doing everything I can to increase sales. Even so, Adrian didn't change his ways. I couldn't accept that someone like him was in charge, but since the previous CEO decided it, I had no choice but to follow. A few days after Adrian took over as CEO, I was summoned. Sitting in an overly luxurious black chair, Adrian acted arrogantly. It was unpleasant to watch. Mr. Brown always leaned forward, reviewing documents or making calls, constantly working hard. Remembering that scene, I naturally dislike seeing Adrian sitting there smoking a cigar. It's a shame. You've contributed to the company longer than I have, yet you couldn't become CEO. It's really unfortunate. Adrian sneered at me with a nasty grin, looking down on me. I didn't want to work with someone who didn't see people as people, but I couldn't leave because of the gratitude I felt towards Mr. Brown who had hired me. You've been a pain, so I'm going to work you hard from now on. Be prepared. True to his word, I was given more than double the workload. Moreover, I was made to work in the waiting area near the warehouse, not the office in the factory. The warehouse, without air conditioning, was hot in the summer and cold in the winter. I was given only a computer, a desk, and a chair, and it was obvious to everyone how poorly I was being treated, even causing concern among the employees. I tried to endure the harsh environment, but Adrian kept assigning me extra work. Transfer the money to the new client, urgently. Since I handled almost all the administrative tasks by myself, I completed the transfer without thoroughly checking it. However, that was a mistake. A few days later, I was summoned by Adrian. Wondering what more he could want, I found Adrian furious. What have you done? The account you transferred the money to is our rival company. Were you secretly connected with the rival company all along? I was shocked by the outrageous accusation, but the moment I saw the transfer details, I realized it. The account was one that Adrian had instructed me to use. Naturally, I argued back, but without evidence, there was no way to prove it was Adrian's order. As a result, I was asked to resign, taking responsibility for the scandal. The company I had worked at for so many years. I never imagined I'd leave without being able to repay the company's kindness. I was filled with frustration, but there was nothing more I could do. When I entered the CEO's office, Adrian greeted me with a smirk. If you agree to resign quietly, I'll let you go without pursuing the scandal and allow you a graceful dismissal. Threatened like this, I chose to resign. It's really a shame. You were such a great help, but it ends like this. His hypocritical, regretful attitude was infuriating. I was sad that my career was tarnished by such a despicable person and that the company might become an even worse place. But I'm kind. I've prepared a severance package for you in recognition of your contributions to the company. You should be grateful. Normally, an employee involved in a scandal wouldn't receive a severance package at all. Showing off his generosity, Adrian handed me a statement. The moment I saw it, I was speechless. The amount listed under severance pay was 1 cent. The fact that my severance pay for 15 years of service was 1 cent. It felt like all the time and effort I had put in over the years was instantly destroyed. As I wondered how far he would go to mock me, Adrian provoked me further. It's a token of appreciation. I wanted to ask what this so-called appreciation was. Any reasonable person would hesitate to give such an amount. No, they wouldn't give it at all. Faced with this blatant insult, my patience reached its limit. I had decided to leave quietly, but I couldn't do that anymore. I thought of revenge. I'll tidy up everything and leave. Ignoring the grinning CEO, I start cleaning up my desk. I always felt I didn't get along with Adrian, but I never imagined he would even mess with my severance pay. If that's how you want to play it, I have an idea too. Sir, May I clean up the contents of the computer as well? Adrian gave me permission with a do as you please. His smug attitude was infuriating. I booted up the computer and literally cleaned up everything. Anyone who had worked here would have stopped me from doing this. The next day, I received a call from Adrian. That was the signal for my revenge to begin. Are you done? If so, get out quickly and never come back, like I would come back. Thinking that he would be the one to regret it later, I replied politely and left the company. I couldn't stop laughing inside, knowing my plan for revenge was set. Adrian wouldn't realize the disaster until the next morning. The more I imagined his panic, the more I looked forward to the next day. The next morning, my phone rang. It was a call from Adrian, signaling the start of my revenge. Just as I expected. I felt incredibly pleased. As the phone kept ringing, I leisurely enjoyed my breakfast. Usually, I would have been working at that hour, but having a relaxing morning on a weekday felt refreshingly wonderful. Sipping my coffee slowly, I finally answered the call. Adrian's angry voice erupted immediately. What the hell did you do? I've been calling you this whole time. Why didn't you answer? Hearing Adrian's fury, I could hardly contain my laughter. His anger was understandable. The data I deleted from the computer wasn't just documents, but the management data itself. Yesterday, when I cleaned out the computer, I deleted all the data one by one. Of course, I didn't leave any backups. While it might be possible to recover the data by hiring a computer specialist, I knew that tech-illiterate Adrian would never think of that. Why are you so angry? I have no idea what's going on. My feigned ignorance only made Adrian more frustrated, and his tone grew harsher. The more he got angry, the more enjoyable it became, probably because of all the resentment I had built up. No one else touched the computer but you. What are you going to do about it? You erased all the accounting and customer data. I'm going to sue you for damages. His previous calm demeanor was nowhere to be seen. Adrian was losing it, repeatedly threatening to sue me. Do you have any proof? If you've been using the computer since this morning, you could have deleted the data yourself, right? When I retorted, Adrian fell silent. He couldn't counter the argument, unable to think of checking the deletion times, and convinced himself that the person who last used the computer was the culprit. Adrian's fixation on the computer data had a reason. While losing the accounting and customer data was significant, there was something even more important left on it. The truth lay in the communication tool. Before cleaning up yesterday, I backed up the data onto a USB drive, keeping evidence of Adrian's misconduct. Annoyed by Adrian, my spur-of-the-moment revenge turned out to be a stroke of luck, as it helped me catch him red-handed. I decided to bait the silent Adrian. Why are you so panicked? Was there something important in those files? When I asked, Adrian, now less confident, replied with a hesitant, yeah. I could tell he was rattled, but I didn't let up. I see, the data is gone. All right, I'll head to the office now. I might be able to recover it. Let's go through it together, one step at a time. When I suggested this, Adrian didn't agree. No, that's not necessary. Fearing exposure, Adrian tried to refuse my help. Seeing his reaction, I decided to reveal the truth. Don't worry, I know everything. All your dealings with the rival company. I have evidence of your misconduct. Prepare yourself, Adrian. Upon hearing these words, Adrian made a soundless gasp. Then, I went to the company I had just quit and opened the door to the CO's office. There sat a pale Adrian, drenched in cold sweat. The unusual tension in the air showed he was worried about his safety. But my anger burned too fiercely to show any mercy. Hey Miles, sorry to call you so suddenly after you quit. There was a mistake with your severance pay yesterday. I called you in today to fix that. He was trying to play dumb. A chill ran down my spine. Yeah, it's outrageous to give such an amount as severance pay. I was about to hire a lawyer and sue. As I said this, Adrian's face turned from blue to purple, and I couldn't help but find it incredibly amusing. I cornered him like prey on the edge of a cliff. By the way, when I was cleaning up the computer yesterday, I found something strange. There were communications with a client, but why were there exchanges with a rival company? Can you explain that, sir? That's not true. You're mistaken. It's just a communication network. Even though I already knew what was inside, Adrian's desperate attempts to squirm out of it were pathetic. The content of the communications between Adrian and the rival company included confidential company information. The sneaky man wasn't satisfied with just becoming CEO, he prioritized his own profit. How disgraceful, Adrian. I already have the evidence. Just give up. Or should I confirm it with the rival company? If that's what you want, I'll do it. No, please don't. Just from his reaction, I was sure that the relationship between Adrian and the rival company was very deep. I thought that this wasn't just a temporary alliance for profit, but something Adrian had been planning for a long time when he let it slip. It wasn't my scheme from the start. The whole thing was orchestrated by the rival company's CEO. I'm not involved at all. In his attempt to protect himself, Adrian revealed that the plot was connected to the rival company, though he seemed unaware of what he was admitting. I don't care about your excuses. Tell me everything you've done since becoming CEO. We'll talk after that. Hearing this, Adrian looked desperate, but realizing he couldn't escape, began to confess everything. Adrian had been leaking company information to the rival company. Not only that, but he was also diverting funds and receiving kickbacks from the rival company into his own account. It turned out that Adrian had previously worked for the rival company and had hidden this fact when he joined our company. Initially, his activities focused on espionage and sabotage, but emboldened by talks of a CEO change, Adrian started transferring information and funds, earning rewards in return. He had me make the transfer to set me up, intending to pin his crimes on me to clear himself of suspicion. Disgusted by his selfishness, I took the evidence and reported it to the police. As a result, all the scandals were exposed, and Adrian was arrested for violating the Unfair Competition Prevention Act. Adrian, having resigned himself to his fate, confessed to his crimes even after being arrested. Subsequently, the CEO of the rival company was also arrested as an accomplice, and the entire scandal was brought to light. Due to Adrian's misdeeds, the company faced a difficult time, but soon the previous CEO and his son stepped in to fill the CEO role. Employees thought that if the son had been given the CEO position from the start, none of this would have happened, but I knew the real reason Mr. Brown chose Adrian. Before Mr. Brown retired, I suggested that he let his son, who was in his 30s, take over, but he insisted that no one but Adrian could do it. My son was still young. If he became CEO at such a young age, no one would follow him. Knowing Adrian's tenacity, if my son became CEO, he might be manipulated by Adrian. Although Mr. Brown suspected Adrian, he couldn't catch him in the act. That's why he avoided letting his son succeed him. Little did he know that I would be the one to expose Adrian's misconduct. When I explained the whole situation to Mr. Brown, who was hospitalized due to illness, he laughed. This is a godsend, a godsend. Now I can safely let my son take over. I'm sorry you had to go through such a tough time. That's true. I never imagined I would be used and then forced to quit for assisting in a scandal, but I'm glad it turned out this way. I'm happy to have been able to return the company to your son instead of someone like Adrian. I feel like I've finally repaid the kindness for the company that employed me for so many years. I always wanted to repay the kindness, and this whole incident was something I never expected. Later, Mr. Brown passed away. When my mentor, who hired and trained and inexperienced me from scratch, departed from this world, I felt a sense of liberation. His son suggested I return to the company, but I had no intention of going back. I had finally gained my freedom. Now, I wanted to create something on my own. Before Mr. Brown passed away, he left me with a final message. Don't worry about repaying any kindness. Just live your life as you wish. I was happy to have worked with you. Thank you. In this world, it's considered good to serve society, to repay kindness. But in reality, such obligations may not exist, and life might be freer. I thought Mr. Brown raised and trained and inexperienced me, but to him, I was just a useful employee. By chance, I ended up saving the company, but it was just a coincidence. If I hadn't gotten angry at Adrian that day, I would have given up without seeking revenge. From this incident, I learned two things. First, never toy with people's emotions. If Adrian hadn't made me angry, he would still be in power. But Adrian, full of arrogance, couldn't control himself and self-destructed. Many people who face ruin do so because they anger others and face their revenge. Having learned this, I will never play with people's emotions. Otherwise, I might end up like Adrian. The second thing is that life is much freer than we think. While it's generally said that you should repay what you receive and that working is a given, the real relationship is much freer. Do what you want because you want to. Don't do what you don't want to. When I quit my job and when Mr. Brown passed away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For someone who had been working out of a sense of obligation, the lightness I felt at that moment made me want to take on new challenges. I want to challenge myself precisely because I have nothing. In my middle 30s, with a life expectancy of around 100, what can I devote the remaining half of my life to? What can I do for myself and society? Thinking about finding something that is both rewarding and profitable, I naturally began to move. And so, I set a goal to establish my own company in search of new opportunities.